evening, everyone. Good evening. All right, so one more time, now that you know what is expected. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Great. So this is an audience participation thing. Welcome. I welcome you to the Mazzaro Center. I'm Carlton Jones, the Executive Director of Capital Facilities Management for Boston Public Schools. And I wanted to be respectful of your time, which is why we're going to start. We're going to let these ladies have a seat and join the crowd. There are several people that I'm going to introduce to you momentarily, but what I'd like to do is just get a sense of who else is here. So if you're from the city or from the team, you don't worry about it. But for the rest of you, could you just raise your hands if you are a parent of a child who attends the Eliot School? Just raise your hand. Oh, good. Excellent. So we have parents. Wonderful. And yeah, there are times when you like to raise your hand twice, but can you raise your hand if you're a resident of the North End? Raise your hand. Excellent. Sweet. So that's what this is perfect. This is what we were trying to do. We're trying to share information with those of you who are parents and or North End residents or both on what we're doing as it relates to the Eliot School. We have some great information that we want to share with you, but first I want to introduce a few people to you. So the first person I'm going to introduce to you is a great supporter of this project, Chief Michael Galvin, who's sitting back here. He is largely responsible for the reason why we're here. So welcome, Chief Galvin. We also have someone that most of you know, if you don't, you will. Okay, I don't see it. The principal of the Eliot School. Hi. So Tracy Griffith, welcome. Also, let's see, I'm looking to see if there's anybody else from Boston Public Schools here. I don't believe so, so I'll move on. We have a number of folks who are representing the project team. One half of it being from the Property and Construction Management Division. So the first person I will introduce, who's not looking this way, is Mr. Brian Melia. Brian's the project manager. You'll hear from him momentarily. Also on the team is Brian's boss, Joe Mulligan. I think height runs that division. Joe Mulligan, the director of Property and Construction Management. And also representing, rounding out that PCMD team is also Dave Globally, he just helps keep us all straight. So Dave, welcome. So that's kind of the project team on that side. Then on the other side, and they are just sitting apart.
We work together.
They work together. It's not that they don't like each other, trust me. But sitting over here, on this side, we have the architectural team from Feingold, Alexander, and Associates. So first is Miss Nancy Goodwin. Nancy. Yep. And then with Nancy, we have, beside Nancy to her right is Mr. Christopher Lane. And also Bonho Coop, also from Feingold Associates. And they will present momentarily. So, we like to come out, we, the team, we, PCMD, Property Construction Management, Property Management Division, we like to come out and share information with whomever's involved, really, on projects, because we think it's great information, we're excited to be here, we're excited to share with you information about what's going on. So I'm sure you're all here to find out what's going on with the Eliot School, what's going on with North Ministry, what's going on with 585. Our goal tonight is to answer those questions for you. And I will tell you, we're not going to be able to answer all of your questions because some of the answers are just not known. We're not there yet. But we'll answer as many as we can to this point in time in the project. Half of the presentation is going to be about the school, what's going on at the Eliot in terms of its use of the three sites that the three sites that we will talk about. The rest of it has to do with the construction. Right? So some of that construction at a particular place might be of your greatest concern. What's going on over here? I want to know what's going to happen with fill in the blank. We want to answer those questions as well. Before we start down that road, though, there are a couple of ground rules. There's always ground, schools, rules, whatever. So we have ground rules. Oops, I can tell you, that's the agenda. I was just like going off my sheet, not going off my slides. So I just went through that. That's kind of what we're doing, the agenda. We, them, him, hi, yeah. Oh, by the way, and at the end, it's time for you to talk. I said this is audience participation. So what we want to do is present information to you and then take questions at the end. We have set aside time exclusively for you to talk after you've heard what has been said. So that's the last few questions. The ground rules. Okay? So because what we do want to hear from you, we want to allow you to hear from us, the first ground rule is just be respectful of one another. Please come on in and have a seat. Welcome. Be respectful of one another because there's no such thing as the dumb question or everybody else knows this but me, so I'm not going to ask. Please ask your questions. This is your opportunity. But be respectful of one another. Allow the questions to be asked and answered. That's what we ask. We ask that you to listen and consider the opinions of others. create a space that provides an open and honest dialogue. Okay, this is like kindergarten rules, I understand that, but we just want to make sure we guys are all on the same page. We want to allow everyone an opportunity to speak, so no one would get shouted down or talked over. That's just basic. Honor time limits. So for instance, when it comes time, we're asking that the questions are 2 minutes. If you can't ask it in 2 minutes, then that's the second question, right? So we're asking that the questions have a 2-minute time limit. And last but not least, silence or turn off cell phones. I think that's pretty common and standard, but you know, we don't want anyone to get their train of thought interrupted by the crazy ringtone. So, let's see. I think everybody's comfortable. I hope you're comfortable. If you're not, I think they opened the door back there to let some air in, which is great. And so, I have done all that I'm supposed to do, and I did it in my time limit, so I honored my time limit. So the next thing I'm going to do is present to you Ms. Tracy Griffith.
So good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So I am a school principal, and every day I have children welcome us to our school. So good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Tracy Griffith. I am the proud principal of the best public school in Boston. I'm also a proud parent. My son graduated from the Eliot and now is an 8th grader at Boston Latin, and my daughter is in 6th grade at Eliot, and we'll go to Boston Latin in the fall. So we're here today. 7 years ago, actually on last Tuesday, was my entrance into this amazing community. There were about 150 students. On April Fool's Day in 2007, I walked through the doors at the Eliot School. As I said, there were about 150 students. At that time, it was a K-6 school. I was told that it was a dollhouse, that it needed some fixing. And I really, at that time, had been, I think, about 18 years in Boston Public Schools. And I thought, what an amazing opportunity, a brand new principal walking into this amazing small space, and found there were some things that needed to be fixed. So with 150 students, there were quite a few students that had been suspended. The number is still we're still trying to figure out the exact number, but it could be between 25 and 39 suspensions for that year up till April. So there were a lot of things that weren't going right. What I do know was going right is sitting in this room. The North End community and the fabulous families and this caring community embraced this school, and I stand before you 7 years later to say not only the Eliot School will have one campus, but it will have 3 campuses to serve North End families and families in and around the home-based A model, which is a brand new model that the district has embraced. So with this idea comes a lot of questions. But the bottom line, the reason I'm standing before you and I asked Carlton that I could talk to you is to first say thank you for all that you do as a community. The North End community owns this public school and has turned it around with business owners, with families that have students at Eliot, or just are embracing public education and turning our school around. And so the last 3 years, we've scored in the state of Massachusetts #1 in 6th grade math, the highest growth percentile, and it's more than just test scores. What we've done is we've created a community of learners where not only is it about test scores, but it's about making a difference in your community and beyond. So we're sending students off to high school and making a commitment to creating college and career-ready students. And that cannot get done on the backs of just teachers and principals. It gets done by families, it gets done by our community. And so I want to say thank you first and foremost to be sitting here and to be dreaming this dream, because this is a utopian dream. And those of you that know me, I live in utopia. And so when I walked in 7 years ago to a 1913 building, I thought there must be some more space in the North End. And I talked to a few people and there was some space. And I talked to our wonderful city planner, our Chief Galvin, who said, there's not much space. And I said, well, there must be a little bit of space. And we kept having this conversation, and we talked to our friends in the downtown neighborhoods, and we found out that there was a need not only for the North End community to have a new public school, but for our North End community and beyond, how can we create this amazing place? So I'd like to say first and foremost, thank you I have some of my governing board. We're now at Renovations School. My co-chair, George Mendoza, who's also a community member, a parent, a business owner, and a North End resident. George Mendoza. My other governing board member, Susan Antonio, who also sits on our governing board as a parent. And all my parents, just wave to me, just give me that big high five. Okay, so it's also very important that we realize that with a big project like this, there will be a lot of questions. I don't have any of those answers, but there are great people in this room that will show you some information, and that the conversation and the dialogue that will happen, we're opening it now so that we can make sure that questions and concerns from our neighborhood are answered, but also from our families. Because this is a big project, and we want to make sure that along the process that we have an open and honest dialogue about what it looks like now and what it looks like in 2024. It's a long way off, but it is only 10 years when you think about it. In a project this size, we have to think 1, 3, 5, and 10. And what does that mean for families that don't have children in the North End? What does it mean for families that live in the North End or around? And those are the questions that will be answered tonight and ongoing. And so I'm thankful that you're here and that it's videotaped so that it's on forever, that we can always refer back to the beginning of this conversation. But this is a conversation that has been happening for years and years. And we're happy Mayor Walsh has embraced this project and continues to work with us closely to make sure that that happens. I would be remiss, we've hired a new development director, Ms. Julia Mayer. This year, as we've grown in size, we've grown in a need to make sure that we continue to grow not only in our programs, but make sure that that funding continues, as it takes more than a village to fund the Eliot. So thank you, Julia, for joining our team, and I'm going to turn it over so that we can continue the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so as Tracy mentioned, yes, in fact, this meeting is being videotaped. I neglected to mention that at first. You see the gentleman in the back, Mr. Matt Conti, the editor of the North End Waterfront. So if you ever want to check yourselves out on video. But anyway, if you don't want to check yourselves out on video, I think that's a great place for you to sit way back there. So you have your options. But yes, this is a public meeting, and so he has the privilege and right to do so. So yes, 3 sites. So we have 3 pictures. Just in case you're not familiar with where the Eliot currently is or where it's going to go. This is the first location, 16 Charter Street. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the Eliot School there. We're also looking at another location for the expansion where they're operating now. This is at 585 Commercial Street. You know that Mayor Menino worked with many folks in the city to acquire this property and did so for the downtown school folks. And so one of the conversations was, well, what is that school going to be? Who's going to run that school? Who's going to manage the school? Does that school have a following? Does that school have anything behind it? Or is it just some school that we're going to try to open up in a couple of years once the renovations are complete? Well, where's Miss Utopia? There she goes. So, their principal said, well, I have an idea that might make this work. And at first we looked at it with a little bit of skepticism, only because we wanted to make sure that we remained true to our commitment. That we cannot make this look like a bait and switch. We cannot make this seem as though people are getting something that they're not. In fact, what happened is not only are people getting something, but they're getting something better and sooner than we had originally thought. And since that's what I'm going to talk through tonight, it's a little convoluted, but we're going to walk through how these properties are going to be used. So 585 Commercial Street, we're in there now, and you'll see that as we go forward. And the last one is the 39 North Bennett Street location, which is the former home of the North Bennett Street School. That property, and the architects are going to talk with you a great length about that, is being renovated for use by the Eliot School. So the Eliot K-8 school will in fact operate in each of those 3 campuses as students move through. And each of those facilities are being constructed and or renovated to accommodate the grade range that would be in each school, which is a great thing. It's a luxury that we don't always have to be able to do that, to chunk it out that way. So here we go. So this chart here, you're not going to be able to read it necessarily, but I'm going to go through it line by line. But in the overview, the orange section on the left-hand side relates to the 16 Charter Street building, the Eliot School building. The middle, 585 in the light blue, and the green on the right is the North Bennett Street. The light gray indicates when the building is not being used, and the colors when the building is being used. And I know you can read it, but here we go. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to focus your eyes and attention to one row at a time. So the first row relates to school year 13-14. That is our current school year. So that's where we are now. And currently, the Eliot building, if you will, 16 Charter Street, has children in the grades K through 4, K0 actually, which is the 4-year-olds, K1, correction, K0, 3-year-olds, K1, 4-year-olds, all the way through 4th grade. They are currently at the Eliot School building, 16 Charter Street. The 585 Commercial Street currently has 5th through 8th graders in it. And I keep looking around because I want to make sure that I'm not saying something that is not correct. Okay, and so the North Bennett Street School is in design. This is our current school year. This summer, the 585 building will be renovated to accommodate another grade of children. And so the 4th graders will go to the Commercial Street building for the next school year. Oh, here we go. Change. Two grades? And the grades are?
3rd and 4th.
3rd and 4th grades. Okay, 3rd and 4th grades this way. Thank you for that. 585 Commercial Street being used, and North Bennett Street still still is in design. So, come September 14-15. So now I need to update that. But anyway, you get the idea. That we're moving the children around. 14-15 grades, K0 through 2. All right, K0 through 2. That's actually what it said. Are going to be at the Eliot School, 16 Charter Street, 585 Commercial Street, 3 through 8. That's the update, 3 through 8. So this is a little bit older. So that those two buildings will be in use while the work continues on the North Bennett Street property. Moving along, you'll see that we're having, children will be at the Eliot Street, 585 for yet another year while the building is actually under construction. This is September 15. And then September 16, that's when the North Bennett Street building comes online. Now, there's work that's needed at 585 Commercial Street. And so that building will be taken offline for 1 year. And the reason for that is because of the type of work that's envisioned for that building is not conducive for it to be utilized at the same time. And that's when the project team will talk about what's going to go on there. Yes? There we go. Just looking for confirmation here. Okay, so North Bennett Street comes online. Children will be in there, grades 3 through 8. And then in 17-18 is when the final sand has settled, where the students will be at the Eliot School, grades 6 through 8. 585 Commercial Street, where the lower grades are, so that children will move from one building to the next building to the 3rd building. The North Bennett Street will serve grades 3 through 5. North Bennett Street is well, that's the first year it goes online, 17-18. I have a question, Tracy. You mentioned longer than that. So, did you have any thoughts about what the longer?
No, we were just talking about what that would look like numbers-wise.
Okay, great. So yeah, so effectively, in those years showing, 1, 2, 3, 4 years hence, we will have moved children around so that we can accommodate them in each of the 3 locations. So, to get into the details, I'm going to invite up, actually Brian Milia, the project manager, to actually speak to the construction.
So would you like to have the presentation done so that we can look at the floor plans before we get into schedule and so forth?
I've got a question first. We actually, at the North Bennett Street location, currently designing for the upper school.
So, define upper school.
It's called the upper
It's
school.
called the upper school. Define the grades.
I thought it was 5 through 8.
Okay, 5 through 8, North Bennett. Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Because our firm is in the north end as well. Doesn't quite show on the map, but we're on North Washington Street. We've been there for 50 years. So this is the plan with all of the schools. This is the 585. This is North Bennett and Charter Street. See the green space where the students now actually traverse in here. 585 is a great location because it has a lot of fields and athletic facilities associated with it. I'm going to go just quickly through. What's this? I thought we were going to have 585. Something's wrong. Sorry. Can you hear me, by the way? If you can't, raise your hand and let me know, because I'm kind of looking at the pictures too. This was going to be the last picture, so something has happened with our presentation.
It is the last picture, going back.
Okay, I went backwards? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, all right. There we go. I thought. So, where would I be? Colleagues. So this is last summer we renovated 585 to be used for temporary classrooms on the first floor of 585. This summer, the second floor will be renovated for additional classrooms at 585. So that's what's going on in this building. As Carlton mentioned, in the final plan, the whole building will be renovated, and at that point in time, it will no longer be temporary classrooms, they'll be permanent, and they'll redo, the city's plans to redo the whole building with all new exterior wall and insulation and roof and everything. And the current plan, it's kind of temporary, it's really good space. I think Tracy will attest that the kids love it, because it feels new and it's very bright, lots of windows, great views. I'm going to turn it over to Christopher to go through the plans for North Bennett Street, and then I'll pick up with the design of the exterior of the building.
So just starting with the first floor, and it's important to mention, and Nancy will touch base on it when we get into the elevations, is that to really do this, we are looking at leveling all of the floors within the building, which is going to make the environment first much more conducive for a school, as well as address all of the handicap accessibility issues that the current building would have. So this being North Bennett Street and this being Salem Street, the current entry being in this door where the original stair is, this would essentially be where the entry to the store was. So what we've done for the plan is essentially just move the entry down to the other end of that existing storefront that's there, because that's where we can get in at grade and allow for a handicap entrance. We'll be keeping this exterior door intact because of the historic woodworking that's there, as well as keeping what was the original North Bennett School entry off of the now stair, which we're going back to with the stair. So coming into the building, this is really the main entry into a generous lobby and a reception point or check-in area before you can get into the main corridor and access the rest of the building. The first floor is really programmed with one classroom, your cafeteria area, and the nurse's office and some guidance counselors. This area is a double-space, multi-purpose space. So I'm going to jump down to the basement for a second. So once we're down in the basement, which is accessed by this central open stair, we get into this corridor and this multi-purpose type space and gang bathrooms feeding that. It's important to mention that we are adding 2 new fire stairs to this building, which we'll look at in the elevations here between Carlston and Shaw, and then here in the back behind Greener. So moving through the building, up to the second floor, we've taken advantage of the fact that we're redoing all of the floor plan by locating the centralized located corridor and wrapping the classrooms, what's rendered in tan, around the perimeter to take advantage of natural light and as much of the windows as possible, as well as to have a variety of classroom sizes. So this really becomes the typical floor plate that moves through the building. So the student or teachers would really be moving through this centralized stair to get to each floor. So moving up to the third floor, again, same type of floor plate with classrooms wrapping around the perimeter. There's 21 total classrooms, 3 sped classrooms, and 3 enrichment classrooms, which would be an art classroom, a computer classroom, and the a sped classroom, an additional sped classroom.
And the media.
And, I'm sorry, the media center on the first floor. So on the fourth floor, again, it's the continuation of that same floor plate. Classroom drop around the perimeter, the multiple floors, Tileston and Greener drop off because they're not as high as the original building. And then we begin to open up the floor here because we're adding at the roof a monitor or a skylight that's going to get some natural light into this centralized corridor. Just a couple of sections cut through the building, which may or may not make sense without having the plans side by side. This being the double height space in the middle of the building, and you can see the height of the stairs. This would be that fourth floor top corridor with the opening in the floor line right to get down into the third floor, and this monitor or skylight up at the top of the roof to allow that natural light. And this is just a section cut through the other way. And again, this would be through the entry where you enter the building and the double height space here. And this really just shows all the classrooms that would be around the perimeter. I just want to jump back because I did skip the media center and it's important to point that location out. So after we come off at the main entry, this lobby space, there's a media center, which we're still trying to work through what the uses are going to be, but there's going to be computers and some projection and kind of a multi-use space that is able to be controlled separately from the rest of the school because it's off of this main lobby. These are just a couple of the interior views, very schematic, talking about where we're looking at accent colors and such. And and let me just go back to a slide because I didn't point it out in the plan. The original building, the original church that was in the complex was in this area. As we know, that this is Tileston, Greener, and there was originally a church on the site here, and then the additions we're putting to wrap around that. So using that to inform what we're doing on the interior and in these interior views, we start to do that through the idea of color or accent colors. As you're looking down the corridors, this being that church wall where we have the corridor and the open space above, bringing the light in from the monitor, and using color at the classrooms to create these alcoves or areas that signify where the classrooms are off of the board. And this would be that fourth floor space with the double height space and the monitor allowing natural light to come in, and this being that reminiscent wall where the church once was, with the stairs that we were at, and these entry alcoves to each classroom. And with that, I'll turn the over to Nancy.
Thank you. So this is still somewhat of a work in progress. In fact, we had a meeting just this morning with PCMD to review the materials and the design of the building. But the intent overall is that the main building, which is this building here, the original North Bennett Street School, is going to be treated as a historic building that it is, with very traditional approaches to the windows, the colors, and the openings. This area here is where it's wrought iron, with wrought iron columns. This is where the gift shop used to be, and it will now be the new main entry to the school. So we're proposing a color at this area to attract people and make it very clear that this is the entry. And this glass actually penetrates in. So when you come into this entry, you can go in, you can see into the lobby from outside, and you can see through the lobby into that double height space, and actually through perhaps even into the cafeteria. So it's a very open, very transparent entry into this new school. It's really the heart. This is the Tileston Street townhouse. You can see we've been a little more aggressive with our treatment of these buildings. They're not quite as historic. We, in leveling the floors, would have had floors going through existing windows. So we're treating these with strips. These are within the existing window frames, but we've lowered the sills and raised the heads so that we have a continuous strip window with spandrel panels where the floors will actually go through. The monitor, this is not an additional floor at the top, this is just a monitor to let light in to the building below, to the 4th floor, and as Christopher explained, spilling down into the 3rd. We're big fans of natural light, and it's been proven that natural light is very beneficial to education and learning. This is the rear of the building. As I mentioned before, as Christopher mentioned, we're adding 2 new egress stairs. One on Tileston Street here, and the other in the parking area. They are both replacing what were fire escapes. So we're taking those fire escapes out and replacing them with new safe egress stairs, which may be used for some circulation with teachers supervising, but they are new elements in the building. And we're kind of following the parameters of the National Park Service. I don't know if any of you are aware, but they recommend that new elements of a building be designed as new elements. They don't try to imitate what might have been there before. So we're suggesting the use of metal panels, and the pattern is still in a working design, but would be both stair towers with metal panels and a base of a masonry material. We're looking at a brick, but a beige brick that matches the stone on the main building, because it's very difficult to try to match any brick red color. They're all different. All of these buildings have different brick colors. I think that's the end, isn't it?
Yeah, there's one more.
One more?
One more views there.
Oh, okay, so this is a view from the east side showing the stair tower that's in the place, which also may be used for a little bit of outdoor space. And the other one on Claxton here. Okay, this is the one that started by mistake, so we're ending with this one. This is a rendering look, and you'd never see it this way. You'd have to be in somebody's living room somewhere up the street. But this is showing what they might look to in a 3-dimensional form. This is what those stair towers would look like. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, I'll just go over the schedule and associated with this. Yes.
The fun part.
Again, I'm Brian Eliot, I'm the Senior Project Manager for the Public Facilities Department. I've been working on this project for the last year and also 585 Commercial Street. And knowing Tracy for the last year and a half, it's an exciting project, and she does a fantastic job with the kids in the community. Full of energy, and it's positive energy, so it's great, great working with her. I just want to go over the schedule, what the anticipated construction timeline is, and the bidding process. So right now we're going through a pre-qualification process for all general contractors and subcontractors. That pre-qualification process, the application should be in on April 29th. There's a committee that's formed, and what we do is evaluate the contractors, and then what we do is invite them to get in this project. We try to weed out any of the bad contractors as best we can. Yeah, it's sometimes a challenge, but we do what we can. After we pre-qualify, we invite the contractors to come on and put the bids in. We're expecting on or about July 15th, the bids will come in. And then we expect to execute a contract mid to late August, summer. So that's the anticipated schedule for that. The construction timeline is actually about 21 months from that date. So September 1st through June of 2016 we anticipate to be completed with the construction. From June to September, we'll fit out the building with furniture and equipment as required for the kids, technology and so forth, working with Tracy and BPS staff. Just on a side note, 585 Commercial Street, the second floor. I have bids coming in next Thursday with an anticipated start date of middle of May and a completion by September 1st, August. Yeah. So again, we can fit that out.
Stay with September 1st.
We need time to fit that out too, yes. We have a package coming in for furniture and equipment also for the second floor, as we did for the first floor this past September. So basically that's the schedule in a nutshell. On a side note, you're probably wondering what the cost of this is. The construction dollars to do this construction complete is about $18 million. So the city is putting in a substantial amount of money to bring this building back to where it should be. There's a lot of code violations and so forth, and the city invested into putting that in so it's a quality school. As you can see from the floor plans and the elevations here. So we're excited, our department's excited, BPS is excited, and we're just thinking positive about this whole thing. And I'll turn it over to Conti.
Thanks, Brian. So you've heard a lot of information for about 45 minutes or so. Now it's your turn. So I'm going to moderate, if you don't mind. And now it's time to ask questions about the school, construction. Yes, ma'am.
This little building that's on the corner, it wasn't shown in the floor plans, or have to
Shall I answer?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure, it's not part of the project. I believe it's the plan.
I'll just come back to the plan.
Oh, to the plan. That, we're only using
The house is not included. It does have a connector tunnel. It's got its own heating. That's going to be cut off, and I'm not sure. We'll look at the future. We've got a new administration, so working with the administration to see what happens to that. But if you've been in it, the stairs go up like this, not ADA compliant. It's very compact, and in fact, they used it. There was a piano in one of the rooms, and they used it for meetings more than anything else. So, and I believe, and that's historic. The floor upstairs in the conference room is beautiful, but you can hear yourself walk across it. So that's going to have to be. That's a delicate, but what Brian's going to do is cut it off. It'll be standalone. It's got its own heating system, and it's not connected to the. It is connected to the building, so they could walk through. But that, if you've seen it from the back in the schoolyard there, or that little back alley, it's a little connector, and we're going to cut that off, seal it up, and it will be a self-contained building. We just don't know yet what we're going to do, but it is historical. So, as we said, the whole complex was. So, but that will not be part of this project.
Are there renovations planned for the current school on Charter Street?
So the question was, are there renovations planned for the current school on Charter Street? Yes. However, the full scope of those renovations are still not yet determined. But nonetheless, that's part of the ongoing project. So what we do is, on an annual basis, we submit to City Council for funds for capital. And so that would be a subsequent capital request, probably in the 16-17 time frame would be ideal, in that general time frame. So as these projects are winding down, that's when we would begin to look for work for that building. Before we continue, I just wanted to introduce State Representative Aaron Michaelitz, as he's joined us, so welcome. Do you want to say anything? Would you like to? We've gone through the project. Do you want to say anything to brief us?
I just, I want to thank the city for all the work and BPS on this issue. Obviously, this has been a couple of years now in making it. Many people in this room have participated in this from the start, even before I was involved. I'm very excited doing it. It's just excited to do what we're doing today.
Great, thank you. So did you have a follow-up question?
So the 18 million is just for the North Bennett Street School, not 585, or?
Correct.
Correct. 585 has a separate smaller budget to fit out the second floor this summer.
And then there's also funds to do the entire renovation exterior skimming.
Right, down the road. That's you can call phase 3.
Okay, so, right, that's how we're financing the project, so we have funds in time. Follow-up question? Just make sure.
Yeah. So right now we use the gym upstairs and a multi-purpose room at Charter Street for phys ed. Is that double-story room intended to be gymnasium? Is that a gymnasium?
It's not a gymnasium. It's a multi-purpose space that will be used for athletic activity. But it's not, a gymnasium requires locker rooms and all kinds of other support spaces legally if you give it that name. But Tracy intends to use it as an active space. Similar to what's in Charter Street now.
Will there be a multi-purpose room at 585 for a similar use?
So that's a different phase, right? We've been just working through all of the rooms at North Bennett Street. So 585 is just fit out for 2 years while North Bennett gets done. So I imagine as this is just finished the design phase, then it will move to 585, and that will be another conversation.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So, along the line of space for kids to do activities, it's not necessarily a gymnasium. This building is not designed with outdoor space, so the kids will use what outdoor space. If they have to use outdoor space, what outdoor space would they use? The playground that is at 16 Charter Street, because it's closed, or what other outdoor space they can use?
So currently, well, when we were using the North Bennett Street School last year, a long time ago, it was only last year, the students had no cafeteria at the North Bennett Street School and used the Charter Street cafeteria and used the outdoor space at Charter Street. Okay. So for now, that would be the solution that I would think that would be used. However, there is in North Bennett Street, in the new location of North Bennett Street, which will house 3 through 8 for the year that the 585 goes offline. Mm-hmm. There will be that multi-purpose space. That is a fairly large space. It's as large as it could be. My architects can attest to every inch was taken for that. But that's another opportunity to use as a space. But Nazaro has also been utilized as a space for us as an indoor space. We're working with the DCR when there's no ice on the ring. So there's a lot of different spaces, not just outdoor space, but making sure that there's additional space for our students to play.
Great. Thank you. Let's go here and then
I just have a quick question. I think it was mentioned about the open space that's going to be there for Bennett or Bennett School and the other school. Is that going to pose any form of a distraction to the students as well as any safety issues? If what is seen in the school is being seen by the myriad of tourists that are just right through this area?
Oh, I don't think so. No.
because.
Well,
Referring to this space.
Sorry.
You can put that in
Just to clarify the question, which building are you speaking of?
Oh, I was talking about the health.
This-
Yes, one that's
they're
being
concerned
renovated.
about,
When you had said everything was gonna be an open space and.
well, it's glass. I mean,
Right.
so it's enclosed.
Mhm.
You're worried about
I was
tourists going to,
No, not going in the school, I was
no,
just,
I mean, just passing by, will they be a
right,
distraction
right, to the
here?
students, I didn't know whether.
Not to the students, because this is just the lobby.
Okay.
Students, once they're through here, are in their own space. This is a multi-purpose space, and it's double height, so students would be on the lower level.
Okay.
And I don't think anybody would, it's cafeteria, so this is the most active space in the building anyway, so I think it's a plus that there's an interchange with the street and the students. But most of the classrooms, and this is the only classroom on this level, at the grade level.
If we go one more level, you can see where the classrooms have that arrow removed from. There you go. So we're
Yeah, they're about to have on the floor, as Christopher mentioned, they all have lots of windows, but they're raised.
Great question. Thank you. Yes, sir.
The issue we've seen with a lot of the schools that have recently been built are, we're seeing students and faculty respiratory issues because carpets and other materials that are in schools. How is this going to be addressed? For one, what kind of ventilation system, and what kind of materials will be on the floor? I know from my experience in schools that really carpeted classrooms are probably one of the worst things to have because of airborne illnesses.
Okay, we have all PCT for classroom floors.
So what kind of floor?
It's vinyl ceramic tile.
Similar to what's in this room here.
And the lobby
Vinyl
is a
supplies
stone,
tile.
hard surface that it's stone because it's easier to, it wears better. So, no, we're well aware of concerns about that as well.
And what kind of ventilation system will you use?
We have an up-to-code complete ventilation system,
That'll be
totally new.
Green and yes, ma'am.
Is it an operating cafeteria? Or is the food gonna be shipped in? Or is it
Right, what type of cafeteria?
So warming kitchen and cafeteria.
So the question was, what type of cafeteria? It's going to be a warming kitchen cafeteria where the food.
The food will be brought. There are plans to have fresh vegetables and fruits on site as well. The food service people are looking very carefully into the current nutritional needs of students, as you probably all are aware.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Is there any particular reason why they're not going to put a local centralized air conditioning in the building? Or is it because of the cost period for that? Or
My first year is special. It's definitely a cost factor. So, but I think the project team can speak up to that. But it really is a cost. It might also be
It's a cost and use because the building will not be used in the summer. At least that's the plan. So it didn't really seem to benefit from AC. Brian, do you want to take it any further?
It is a VPS policy. They don't air condition their schools. I know 585 has air conditioning. I think down the road we're going to continue with the 585 in case they want to carry summer school. But VPS, because of the cost and so forth, do not air condition their schools. And that's the drive behind this one.
And it's both the initial costs and the operating costs.
Yes, yes.
Windows are operable.
Yes, sir.
the school that was built several years ago, or maybe 10 years ago, Orchard Park over on Melanie Cass Boulevard, is that a centrally air-conditioned school, or is that?
Is anybody on that team Renovations here? So the question was the building. It's actually Orchard Gardens K-8 school.
Yes, like a new school.
Yep. And so those, so there were 3 schools built in 2003. That one and 2 others. So for a brand new one.
Does that
An answer, an answer. In other words, there were decisions that were made well before tonight, which set the project and the project scope and budget. But generally, Boston Public Schools tries to operate schools called community center schools or community schools. Those are the ones that tend to have more after-hour use and full summer use. So the 3 schools that were built that opened in 2003, that one in Mattapan Mildred Avenue School. And I'm losing the track of what's the third one. Frederick, like Elila Frederick on Columbia Road. Those 3 schools were designed to be community schools. So they have gymnasiums and other amenities that allow people to use them almost 365. They're
So they do have central air.
Yeah, but they do have central air, right? But for that reason, because of the continued expected use. So, and that's why when Boston Public Schools has summer school, the summer school sites are selected generally, but not always, but generally with air conditioning in mind. Okay, yes, ma'am.
When all is said and done and there's 3 buildings, are there any areas large enough to fit everyone in the school for mixing the whole assembly areas or?
Right, so the question is there one area that can handle the entire school? I'm pretty sure the answer is no, and
Not in the current plan.
Right, and so that is a concern that some parents have had for other projects. Generally speaking, most of our schools don't allow a one school assembly for all the students to attend, unfortunately. And that really has to do with the fact that Boston is a landlocked city. If we were building the K-8 innovation school somewhere else, we would definitely endeavor to do that. I'm not even sure that it would actually positively happen, but that's where you would find the large auditoriums. For this type of renovation or the 3-campus approach, it's really hard to come by.
Sure. The question then goes to you. Are you once there's 3 separate schools, in my mind, there's a concern that you've got, we're a K to 8, but will the 8th graders ever interact with the K1s like my utopia is?
So you live in the same utopia that I do, Becca. And in fact, what makes our school unique and special is the intimate feeling and the small community. And I think with the current structures and systems that we've put in place to allow for, currently we have a chunk of students that are in another building, like we did last year with grades 6 through 8, that we will continue to provide multiple opportunities for students to go back and forth. And I think even as the next 2 years happen, there are students that will continue to come back to the lower school to interact not only for specialists, but for projects that students will continue to do. I think the new art teacher has done a really good job of connecting the 2 grade levels, doing artwork with 8th grade and kindergarten, and that's something that we're committed to. And as I said, that's what makes our school Eliot. And we're not going to lose that. We just want to continue to provide more seats for this experience for more families.
Yes, ma'am.
With the layout in the 3 buildings, how many outside of the classrooms required? How many other spaces are there? I know we have 2 multi-purpose rooms, a media center. What other, do we have an art room? Do we have a science room? Do we have a library? Can someone give us a big picture among the 3
In the
buildings?
main North Bennett Street School, we have the library is the media center. It's a combination library and media center. Most libraries are going in that direction. We have an art room.
Can it hold books? Yeah. I mean, with the way
we will have
it's-
bookshelves. We
yeah.
haven't determined how many yet. That's still in the program, that particular space.
Okay.
We have a computer room and an art room and 1 science classroom.
And that's in North Bennett or amongst all?
That's in North Bennett.
In North Bennett.
We
Okay.
don't know the plans for the others. They're still in the planning stages.
Tracy,
So-
do you know how many extra rooms we have?
When we talked originally, we had a science classroom, Chris, if you can remember, on the 2nd floor and on the 3rd floor, so that
We still have that, yes.
so there's 2 science rooms,
Sorry.
just based on the eventual grades 5 through 8, and having a 5-6 science room and a 7-8 science room, and then down below having the specialist classroom, as well as thinking about the Charter Street and 585 and the programs and the specialists. Right now, we currently share specialists. We share 1 body that serves K to 8. So we have to look as we grow how we are thinking about the programs with the specials in each building.
How many extra rooms, if 585 builds out the way we expect it to, Charter Street stays how it is, between those 2 buildings, how many extra rooms aren't classrooms?
So it would depend on the program, because the district is still thinking about what's the final program K to 8 and in each building, right? So it also depends on the specialists. So if you have an art specialist for grades 3 to 8, is there 1 art classroom, and is it hosted at North Bennett Street location for 3 to 8, and then K to 2 is down at 585. So I think as we bring 3 to 8 into North Bennett for a year while 585 goes offline, I think those conversations in the next year and a half, as we figure out through our budget what we are anticipating for class sizes and for specialists, then we'll look at the rooms. The numbers of, if you heard Chris said 21 classrooms in North Bennett. So at the beginning, we're not in all 21 classrooms because we're bringing 3 to 8 in for a year. So I think it's a year by year, and I think it's a longer conversation. But I think it should be something that we're thinking about as we open in September, as we plan, what are those classrooms being used for?
Well, I guess that begs the question, we don't know our population at the end of this, because that wasn't part of this, how many kids in what grades are part of Eliot School?
Correct, so we have a projection, but it is a little fluid, unfortunately. That's why, in fact, some of that is off a little bit. I might have, it's changing, it's evolving, it's developing. We know what the end state is desired to be a K-8 school across the 3, but how we get there and exactly how many students and exactly what the programming areas. I mean, some of the things that not necessarily on this project, but affect some projects is, for instance, inclusion classrooms or just the configuration of the classroom. But it's definitely a goal of the district to ensure that we provide specialty spaces so the specialists don't have to travel on a cart. You've heard the expression "hard on a cart." You know, we're trying to, even though out of necessity we had to do that in some cases across the district, we're trying to undo that as much as possible, to not have specialists who don't have their specialty spaces, art rooms, music rooms, science rooms. That is a push the district has, and that is in the foreseeable future. But to tell you exactly, I mean, I do have a document that is still in transition. It does talk about numbers, you know, but it's a little premature at the moment because some of those decision points have not been finalized.
Can you specify the decision points when we would know what
Yes.
our population will be as part of this process?
That's correct, yes. So as we move down the road, so for instance, some decisions are being made about the summer activities, what's going to happen this summer 14. And then the next round of decision is about what happens how do we get to that next year. So as we get further along, we can communicate that out to schools. I mean, we have ideas about it, but it's a little, like I said, it's a little premature, and I don't want to put a number out that becomes the fixed number. It's definitely designed to ensure that the program that the Eliot has in terms of its class size maximum and the like continues throughout. That's for sure. That the student population that's served in terms of your special needs students and the like, that is programmed to continue. I just can't give you the exact numbers just yet.
No, it does. I think, you know, for a school, having unknowns from year to year is a challenge. And so the more predictability and the more plans that can be made, and I guess what I'm hearing from your answer is on a year-by-year basis.
Not quite. I don't want to suggest that. It is a year-by-year, but we're doing it in chunks at a time. So for instance, right now we have an idea of what that in-state's going to look like, but there's some decision points along the way that says how it happens and when it happens necessarily. Some of it has to do with funding, when the financing and the funding comes to play. You know, when are the funds available for us to do some of the things we want to do? It also depends on bids. You know, if the bids come in overbid, well, that kind of limits some of your choices. If you come in under bid, that kind of opens up some of the choices. So it's some of that, but it's not exactly a year to year that you won't know from one to the next. It's really about moving down the road in the design, understanding some of the complexities of the problem. And as we get some of those decisions, as we get to some of those points, then we can go, okay, now we know we can now move to this. I don't anticipate it being year to year, but it's just not here yet. Yes, ma'am.
This may not necessarily have to do with this conversation of 3 buildings, but you said something that was the goal of the district. I'm very excited, and many people are very excited that this is happening. Thank you so much. We're all very lucky to be living in the North End at this time. We just went through a process where the mayor did his 27-person committee that changed the way that we do the lottery, etc. So we are a K-8 school, but entry point for many of the children who are at the Eliot for high school is 7. So in 7th grade, hopefully a lot of our students will leave the Eliot, and a lot of new faces will come who aren't necessarily familiar with the climate and the culture of the school. Across in Chinatown, it's a K-5 school. So a kid will go to 5th grade, through 5th grade at one school. They'll go to the Quincy upper for hopefully just 1 year if they're trying to get an exam school, and then they go to a 3rd school in 3 years. So there's a whole bunch of K-5s, there's a bunch of K-8s, but high school, the entry goal is 7th grade, and so that just doesn't make any sense at all. And it's hard to, it's just very difficult to wrap your head around, why are we doing this whole K-8 thing if it doesn't really make sense with the way people are trying to get into high school, etc. And I just hope that the district, as they're looking at their lottery and their system, can you please fix that? It just doesn't make sense.
Right. So, first of all, that's a great question. that's kind of like the conundrum that we've been trying to solve for years. So I was actually involved in that process with student assignment change. In fact, we did lots of community meetings around the student assignment change and met with the external advisory committee that you were speaking of, that 27-person committee. Right, the external advisory committee process. I was heavily involved in that, and that was one of the considerations. Because I'm on videotape, I won't say it quite the same way I usually say it, but it's I will say, we're schizophrenic in some respects, in the sense that, you have K to 5s, and 6 to 8s, and 9 to 12s, and 7 to 12s, and 7. How do you pick the path? So one of the great things is that Mayor Walsh has put together a team of people for us to actually engage educational planners to help us think this through. So we have a variety of challenges in BPS, and that's one of the challenges, the whole lack of predictability between the grades. And I will say, the counterpoint to what you said about families attending the K-8s is not everybody goes to the exam schools. So what happens to the 7th graders who don't make it, if you will, to use that expression? They didn't get into the exam schools. And everyone knows about the 3 exam schools, I hope you know what I'm talking about. So there are a lot of 7th graders who don't get into the exam schools, and there are 8th graders who don't get into the exam schools who are at K-8 schools. And so how do we ensure that those students have a viable educational opportunity as well as those who go off to the exam school? So it's really that big problem, that big picture issue that Mayor Walsh is asking that a team of from Property and Construction Management Division, Boston Public Schools, the Mayor's Office, and the Budget Office put together an RFP and actually engage some outside professional help on this one, because it really is a challenge that we haven't been able to solve up to this point in time. We also have other challenges. We have so many families approaching BPS at the early grades, right? Lots of families are coming in, which is a great issue. With the change in the student assignment system, more families are saying, well, you know what, let's give BPS a look, and they are. So that's a great problem to have, right? Lots more kids than elementary seats. But then we also have, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have more high school seats and middle school seats. We know that some families are availing themselves of charter school options at certain grades, and so we're tracking that. And so we're saying, well, how do we configure the district in a way that best serves families, and solves that issue about lack of grade predictability and the like. So, you hit it right on the you hit the nail right on the head. Hit the nail right on the head. How do we solve that problem? How do we make it family friendly? How do we give families predictability? Last year we introduced feeder patterns, for instance, where if you come out of a particular elementary school, you go to a particular other school for 6th grade. That is to help with that, but that doesn't solve everyone's needs and issues. So it is really a challenge. The thing that I want to make sure that we don't forget is that a K-8 school, I don't care which K-8 school it is, there are always 7th graders who don't go to the exam schools, either by choice or they didn't make it. Some families are choosing, many families are choosing, Tracy's nodding her head, many families are choosing to not send their children to the exam schools. They're saying, we like our K-8 experience, we're staying. Quincy Upper School, the example that you gave, the K-5 school where they come out of the 5th grade and they have a guaranteed seat for 6th grade at Quincy Upper School. There are many 7th graders who are not leaving, not going to the exam schools, but are staying at the Quincy Upper School. Quincy Upper happens to have an IB program, the International Baccalaureate program, which many families are saying, well, that's just as good for me. And by the way, we like our experience here at Quincy Upper. And certainly we get that new project that we're working on built. They really love their experience at the Quincy Upper. So that's the consideration. But it is a much larger conversation that we want to put a lot of great minds towards solving. And solving, hopefully, I mean, this is like the last thing. We just got to figure this last thing out, and then we have a pretty solid system. Because we don't want to encourage families to have to be able to say, well, geez, I need predictability at a K-5 school. I need predictability through 8th grade or even through 7th grade, so I'm going to leave at 4th grade so I can go to a school where I can have that. That's what's happening in some cases. We want to say we don't want to make you have to leave, make you have to choose. We want to make it so that you can feel like you can stay. You love your school. We want you to be able to stay there. That's where the K-8s are really coming from, in large part.
Right. It's my understanding that the 7th grade entry point into one of the 3 exam schools, there's this many spots. There's no deferral program. You can't stay in your K to 8 and know that you're gonna get in that grade, because there's this many slots. And,
Sure. I mean, that's a great idea. Again, a deferral program. It came up. It didn't go anywhere, but it might come. There will be a community process around what I just spoke about. Hopefully, October, November, December timeframe. That's probably the goal. To be able to have this come out again as a community question. What would best serve families in NBS? What is the configuration that you would most desire? And again, you have to make sure that we are honoring the families who are exam school bound and the families who are not necessarily exam school bound. Yes.
Just one question. What is the strategic plan for the administration of each school? How does that work? Because obviously, if you were one principal of a large school, you're just one person, but you can't be divided 3 ways. So where do you go, and who do does the faculty go to in each individual school?
So I'm going to defer your question to Tracy, who we can't clone 2 times. So since we can, please.
So we're in discussions currently. We have interim superintendent John McDonough, who has sat with me to talk about what this will look like long term. This year, for next year, is that I realize I can't be cloned. It just took a year for me to figure that out. To be between 2 buildings. I have an amazing assistant principal, Ms. Lydia Torres, who works with the upper school currently. However, we are adding a director of operations so that the operational piece around transportation, technology, some of the pieces that take me away from the love of being in a classroom and supporting teaching and learning. So I think that's one of the opportunities that we've used this year by having 2 campuses and realizing what needs to happen. I think the longer term conversation is this idea of having at each building an administrator, and then still having, in my utopia, I get the crown and the scepter, right? That there's this piece that, there's an overseer of all 3 buildings to make sure that what Becca was talking about is that there's a way, there's an Eliot way, there's a special Kool-Aid you all drink. When you're part of the Eliot family, we're responsible, respectful, safe, and kind students. And that needs to penetrate everything that goes on in all 3 buildings, and making sure that administratively there is someone at each one of the buildings, but there's still someone like, hopefully me, that is in charge of making sure that that all happens and supports that process. So this year in September, hopefully you'll come back and say, how are things going? I'll say, that director of operations has made a huge impact because we're trying out some different administrative supports to see with 2 buildings, and then as we move to 3 buildings, what that will look like. We're also in the midst of looking for a new superintendent, and I think the conversations I'm having currently with John McDonough as the interim superintendent will take us through, but this is September of 2017 when all 3 buildings will go online, so it gives us a good solid couple years to really figure out what makes the most sense. So it's an exciting time to be part of this community, and we cannot do it without community support. So it's really important that we continue to ask the district questions, ask the city questions, and then those questions then come through me, and I can answer the best way I know how.
Okay, before I go back, I just want to make sure, does anyone else have a question they have not yet asked or got an answer for?
Just a quick question. Is the plan overall for 5 strands? Is that I know your specific populations can't see.
So I have a document that says that.
5.
Unfortunately, it is 5, yes.
More or less, depending on grade level.
Right.
What does that mean?
So it means currently we've just added a brand new K2 for next year. That was the 4th one. And the goal would be to add, eventually when we go all 3 schools, to have a 5th.
That last one comes online when the 3 schools.
20, yeah.
Right.
So 5 classes per grade?
Yes, 5 classes per grade. So a strand is K through, so it's 5.
What does that look like, integrated versus non-integrated?
So 4 general education classrooms and 1 classroom of 15, 10 typically 5 students on an IEP.
One more question, comment. So when you're moving classrooms and you're moving several blocks, will Tracy and her team have the support to do all that moving?
Are you talking about physical moving or
Physical moving all of their classrooms back and forth. I mean, even just last summer, seeing people move from floor to floor, it is daunting. It's concerning. And then the other piece of that is, so we now have 2 buildings, and there's 50% of the time we don't have a crossing guard at the busy street at 585 Commercial. So just knowing that all those pieces are in place around transportation and that each building has what they need. 3 buildings, 3 times the problem.
So I can't promise what I can't deliver. And some of this is budget driven. We went through a huge budget issue. We had to reduce our budget in order to fit. Having said that, though, the one thing that I'm very pleased that Boston Public Schools is doing is we're looking at these projects and not dumping it on the school. We're not saying, you know what, Tracy, that's your problem, figure it out. That us in central office are actually taking a concerted effort to say, let's try to think through these issues that we anticipate or that we hear are issues and then try to address them from the central office point of view. I hope Tracy feels very well supported in this project. I know there are things that you're not getting, I'm sure. But we're trying to ensure that things like moving and curriculum materials and all that stuff, that it's already provided for. We have someone who's dedicated to just moves. And so when the time comes, whether it's through when the time comes, we'll engage that person and say, okay, Eliot is doing this, that, and the other. Go assist, go help, go, order the furniture at the other location if that in fact is the case. We have people who will do that, and as long as the budget supports it, that's my only caveat, then we are engaged to do that, to help them do that, to partner with her and others like her to do that. That we've taken a concerted effort to do, because one of the things we've heard in the past is schools converted to K-8 and it's like, okay, figure it out. Here we go. And so, lessons learned, we're making sure that we don't do that. We're having a K-8 roundtable coming up next May for the schools that are converting to K-8 that are behind, the Eliot, that are beginning that journey. Make sure that happens. Yes, ma'am.
I think when I just heard the projection of the strands, the 5, eventually 5 per grade, the projected growth sounded like 4 regular ed, 1 still of the inclusion room with the 5.
And then maintaining the highly specialized strand of speech and language-based learning disability.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. It was only going to grow in regular,
No, so
not grow at all.
We're maintaining the integrity of the programming, which maintains the general education, the inclusion strand, as well as the substantially separate speech and language-based learning disability strand, which is a highly specialized strand.
And that's a change. That's a change that Boston Public Schools undertook 2 years ago, to say that we want to make sure that we have programmatic continuity, that if a child starts in a building, that they're served throughout without having to leave over here. We don't want children chasing programs. The programs need to land where the children are, instead of vice versa. Yes, that highly specialized strand will continue all the way through. Yes, ma'am.
What is the requirement that what you saying is not always a crossing guard at the school? And I know making calls to Area 1, Area 1A for traffic cops, details, there. As a school, you don't need a crossing guard.
So I'm totally unfamiliar with the whole subject of crossing guards. Tracy, do you mind?
So I'll update you on the latest information that I have, which has, as a new school coming online September 2nd, it wasn't in the original plan from the Boston Police Department and from Sam DePina's office. So we've been working very closely. There's been, there's a name for it, a detail that's there at 585 to cross. I just spoke with someone from the operations department who is working with providing us with a full-time crossing guard. It has been in the works. There have been a number of calls made, and my hope is that it will happen. And it's now, Mr. Jones will take that back downtown to Court Street, and I think that there will be some movement in that way.
Speak to Sam as well.
Thank you so much.
So he's in the operations department, one of the chief operating officers. And so my takeaway is that we can follow up on that.
It's a very busy street.
Oh, absolutely.
Kids across there.
Absolutely. Safety first, actually. Well, it's April. I'm not sure why we don't have it already.
It's very sporadic.
What part?
It's very sporadic.
Yeah.
What's the idea about putting the older children in the Bennett Street School just because there's more area? I'm just thinking because of the traffic and things for the younger students to be over at that location. Was it just purely space-wise? There was a lot of different conversations.
Space and amenities.
I think the amenities were also important as well. With any project like this, though, the conversation is ongoing. The North Bennett Street School at this point is being fit out for older students, not for younger students. I would say outdoor space would come into play, thinking of just having an early childhood department, school in the middle of so. But I also, I share the concern of having one of the busiest streets with young children. But if you notice that the current way that students are dropped off from transportation, they're on the correct side of it, so they're not dropped off on the Ducali-Filippo side, they're dropped off in front. And that's the hope moving forward, is that any student that is dropped off with the crossing guard there to assist.
Well, is the crosswalk is near like Snow Hill, right?
Yes, it is.
So there's not one at the main door?
No, because if you notice, when they looked at that, there is a crosswalk that goes on Snow Hill, right? Hull. It goes across Hull, and that if you moved it any further, there's a parking garage, and then there's right. So that's, they maintain the integrity of the crosswalk, and if you notice, they did put the sign up, and then they put up that there was a school zone in both. That went up that first day of school. So
can they make it a little bigger? Like
They just don't have
some of these towns I go by and there's like flashing lights, like this is a school. That's what I want to see there. I don't know if that's possible.
We can always ask. We can always ask. Well, we can always ask. So the good news is we work with city partners. Transportation department, police department folks. Getting it done, we can always ask. We can always ask. We can always state the case and say, listen.
Just with the amount of tourists and everybody coming through who are not educated about the place.
Sure. We can ask, because we've all been in these meetings where before school starts, and this is under Mayor Moon, obviously, because Mayor Walsh isn't been here for school start. But in July we started doing school opening meetings, and one of the topics, transportation sitting there, public works is sitting there, all the department representatives are there, and these issues come up, and we talk about the number of crosswalks that are being painted, the ones that are being signaled, and all that good stuff. So we have an inroad to that. I can promise that we can raise the issue and ask. Not sure what the result's going to be, but definitely we can push the point. Okay, so it's getting about that time, so we promised a 7:30 end. It's 7:25 by that watch, and I think that's correct, yep. So anyone with the last question? Gentleman back here. Nothing? You guys are good? Good. All right, everybody's good?
Go back to the chart where,
oh boy.
We can't get back there.
Well, we can. It's just that, you know what, I feel really, really bad. That chart with the colors on it, the one I had. Okay, so that chart was probably good the day it was done, but it's changing. So I can refer to it, but I don't want to do it if it's an error. Can I just ask? If you asked the question, I might be able to answer.
This building is going to be ending up with the older kids.
Okay, so North Bennett Street, when it's said and done, we'll have what?
Grades 5 through 8.
Grades 5 through 8.
Okay, and then the charter location.
Currently, as proposed, we'll have grades 3 and 4.
Okay.
The 585 commercial, as proposed, will have kindergarten through grade 2. Right. One of the limiting factors is obviously numbers of rooms. But one of the beneficial factors is if you limit the number of children there, then you are able to get some of those other rooms out of it. And that's the goal. So for instance, at Charter Street, there are grades 3 and 4 there. There would be an opportunity to now have some other spaces used, like art rooms, and music rooms, and science rooms, and the like. That's part of the work that we're still working on. How do we get that done? Where do we get the financing to renovate the school to do just that? It may very well become, and it will become a city capital request that we make. So again, I had mentioned we make, so this year we're requesting $62 million $62 million in project spending for next year, for fiscal year 15. So in our fiscal year 16 or 17 request, we will ask for money to do that building, the 16 Charter Street building, once we have identified what it is that we're trying to do. And we'll say, okay, that's the number, this is the ask, and then we go to City Council and ask for the funds to spend in that way. That's how it's done. Representative.
Just 2 quick questions, and then I'll kind of short. And I'm impressed to see all these people, come out today. But I know that some people are not able to come to this because they obviously have other obligations. And so my question was 2 things. One, is there going to be a link? And if you answered this already, I apologize because I did come in late. Is there going to be a link to be able to view the project online of some sort outside of the videotaping?
That's a great question. It was not asked before. So the question is there going to be a link where we can have information? I'm looking at the architects. It seems like that's where that generally comes from. Brian, do you have any idea about where a website where information on the project can go, whether it's the school's website, Tracy?
Do you have a website, the school?
So you have a website.
Yeah, we'll put it up. We can make it available on the school's website and link to that. That's
right. So we could put up this presentation and link it to Tracy's website.
Perfect.
So you can look at the slideshow as a PowerPoint.
So that would be great. And then secondly, for the people that aren't here today, is there a way for them to comment? Is there a public comment period of some sort, or what's that process like? If you're already answered that or covered that, I apologize.
So we have it. That's another great question not asked. So I'm not answer for sure. So public comment. So you know what?
Put it on the website.
I've been working on large projects where we have had frequently asked questions and all that. Not generally for projects of this size, but
during the process, we're still in some of the really design phases. This is not the final plan. There's some iterations that will be modified. But throughout the process, Brian, as project manager, will be meeting with the community, leading up to the construction activities and throughout the construction activities. So he'll make himself available for the real nuts and bolts aspects. There's issues. We didn't really talk about a lot today, but I think people who live in this community can imagine that the staging, the logistics to do a complete gut renovation of a building this size is very complicated. And we'll be coming back to meet on issues related to construction once we get closer to it. And I'm sure there'll be lots of comments during the construction period of concerns or issues that will arise. And that's what's great about having Brian. He's on site, he's focused on this project, although he has other projects in his portfolio. But he will be the primary contact throughout that. If there's issues related to the pedagogical issues or the classroom issues, I direct them to the principal, and she has been involved in the process throughout and can answer those questions as it relates to students and how they relate to the building.
Thank you. Well, listen, thank you very much for spending your time with us. You know, we all have places to go and families to attend to. So, thank you very much, and look forward to the next time.
Thank you.